in order to create all these devices, in order to operate all of them, what's emerged in America, unbeknownst to most people, is an entirely new industrial, energy-consuming class of things, buildings, the manufacturing facilities that make all of this digital economy, and the data centers that manage the information flow are megawatt-scale, monstrous electricity and energy-consuming buildings. The number of data centers that exist in America today, a word that didn't exist 50 years ago, there was only one data center on the planet in 1946, which was the first computer. The number of data centers have grown so rapidly and continue to grow that data center energy consumption now outstrips energy used in civil aviation, in the form of electricity, of course. So when you read your email or watch YouTube on your iPhone, I know I don't. When you sit at your desk, that's what everybody does with iPhones, I think, is that they're watching the latest Jon Stewart clip of, did you see the Jon Stewart clip on global climate change? If you haven't seen it, get somebody to send it to you. It's delicious. It really is. And I like the guy after all. I mean, I was on a show and he was very nice to me, so I'm a fan now. You have to be. If he's nice to you, you got to be nice to him. He's a smart guy. But when you watch YouTube, when you sit at your PC, I mean, obviously electrons are flowing, and somewhere in America, I guarantee you, coal's being burnt, uranium atoms are being split, and mostly that's what's going on, and natural gas is being burned to make that all possible, not just in the handheld you have, but the entire infrastructure that supports it behind it. In fact, all told, the information and digital part of our economy consume the energy equivalent of 700 million barrels of oil a year, not oil, of course, and rising, but in energy equivalent terms, 700 million barrels. So this brings me to the fourth principle. It's sort of implicit in what I've been talking about. Everything about energy is really about technology. Well, it's not true. It's about money and politics in this city. But if you're a physicist, if you're an engineer, if you're a business, everything about energy and everything about forecasting energy is about technology. It's never about raw resources. It's not about tons of stuff or barrels of stuff or how many acres of windmills you have or solar arrays, how much corn can be grown. It's about technology. It's the technology that determines why and how we use energy and how we get our energy. The oil under the North Sea, the oil under the deep waters off the coast of Brazil, this massive new find that's been discovered recently in Brazil, that doesn't exist as a useful resource but for the deep sea technology that's now possible to access that oil. The same is true with solar power. The same is true with biofuels. The photons that hit the farmer's field, whether they become food, biofuel, or electricity, are entirely determined by technology. If you think about it, if it's fundamentally the technology that permits everything, then your ability to both forecast, regulate, anticipate what's going to happen is driven by your understanding not of the raw resources, but of technology and technology change and progress. And the reason that I'm an optimist, by the way, that we can and will meet the challenges in our energy sector is because it's about technology. And I have not only no belief that technology progress has stopped, my life has been spent looking at technology change and forecasting. And I tell you today, we haven't slowed, we're accelerating. We may briefly slowed because of the fiscal crisis that harms innovation and creativity, but we haven't stopped creating new technology. Which brings me to a fifth principle, and I apologize for this principle only because it requires that I briefly use a word that comes out of physics instead of economics or policy. And this is a principle which I'll summarize by saying that not all BTUs are created equal. Alan Greenspan wrote a piece and said there was going to be BTU convergence. You are all sophisticated enough, but a BTU is a British thermal unit, which is an archaic term. Just by when I say the words, you know it's an archaic term. It predates the colonization of America, a British thermal unit. We measure and count energy in BTUs. Go to the Department of Energy's Energy Information Administration, and you find BTUs. The problem is that counting things in BTUs is just not informative, and it's worse than not informative. It's counterproductive. One BTU looks just like any other BTU when you count them as BTUs. Let me explain. 1 ton, if you count tons, a ton of gold, a ton of rocks, a ton of wheat, a ton of beer, they're all tons. You can all measure them in tons legitimately. It doesn't tell you very much about what the ton is, what it can do, and what it's worth. You can tell what the ton is really by money, and you can do this with BTUs as well. You know, a barrel's worth of BTUs in the form of oil, before you tax it and so forth, it comes out of the ground, is about 20 bucks. A barrel's worth of wood, you know, a few bucks. A barrel's worth of BTUs of coal, 10 or 15 bucks, although I know Peabody Coal is here and wish that it'd be a lot more than that. But a barrel's worth of energy counted in BTUs of electrons that light up these lights and drive electric motors, that's $10,000. A barrel's worth of BTUs counted in the form of lasers, photons, and lasers are ubiquitous devices these days, that barrel of BTUs costs $200,000. What's the difference between them? Well, obviously, one is more useful than the other. That's why we pay more for it. But it's more than that. The ones that are more expensive tend to involve more technology to put them in a more useful form that has higher value. And what the technology does, and this is the physics terms, it strips entropy out of energy. Entropy, and not to give you a physics and a high school lesson here on a morning Friday in Washington, this is not. Entropy is, by definition, the tendency in everything in the universe to become disorganized, to fall apart. Aging is entropy. Everything in the universe has entropy increasing, which is a weird way of saying everything's falling apart. The best forms of energy have less entropy. We have to strip entropy out. We have to add order. We have to add control. Doing that requires technology, and all activities to take entropy out, to add order to energy, all steps like that consume energy. Now, in Washington, when we count BTUs, we call that wasting energy. That's how it's counted. When you consume energy to add value, you've wasted energy. In the laws of physics, you must consume energy to add value to strip entropy. It is not possible to do otherwise. Congress may pass laws otherwise, and they will. I've been in this town a long time. Congress is not afraid of the laws of physics. I know this. Or the laws of economics. That I know too. But both win out in time.